Hey team, Jack Delosa here, founder of The Entourage, and welcome to this episode of the Make It Happen show. Over the last 12 months, business owners everywhere have had quite a challenging journey in navigating the uncertainty of everything that's been going on in the world. For our 11th birthday here at The Entourage, we wanted to do something about that. We've created a resource center where everything you need, regardless of what stage of business you are at, is in this resource center, whether it's short courses, ebooks for how do you start, how do you grow, how do you scale beyond yourself, how do you build an organization that's scalable and sustainable that can grow beyond you. It is all there. Simply head to www.the-entourage.com/resources to access everything you need from the world's best entrepreneurs to start growing faster now. Let's get into the Make It Happen show.
If you don't tell everyone how good you are, and then who's going to say it? And if you got a great business with great numbers and great stories to tell, you might as well scream it to the world. Both of us are not technical, both are not financial, both of us don't get the legal side of the business. But we also say that we always surround ourselves with smart people. So if we had an area that none of us were actually strong at, we made sure that we hire someone that's smarter than us. Please keep your open eye, make sure you know your competitors, go to breakfast with them like I've been breakfasting people from Maya, David Jones or Kogan over the years, and good things will happen.
Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of the Make It Happen show. I'm Tim Morris, the CEO of The Entourage, and today I'm joined by Gabby Leibovich, who, along with his brother Hezi, built Catch of the Day, Scoopon, EatNow, and a whole host of successful businesses. They've managed to sell a number of those businesses for more than $1 billion, and he's encapsulated all his lessons in a fantastic book called Catch of the Decade. So we touch on a lot of the stuff in there, but most importantly, what I took from this is Gabby's attitude, right? He talks about chutzpah a lot, and he's absolutely got that in spades. So if you want to know how to disrupt an industry, if you want to know how to build multiple successful businesses, this is the episode for you. Today, I am joined by Gabby Leibovich. Gabby, how are you doing?
I'm doing great from not sunny Melbourne.
Yeah, well, that is Melbourne most of the time. Now, Gabby, I've got to admit, I had a great plan for this podcast, right? I was going to have a read through Catch the Decade, your book, and I was going to pick out like 2 or 3 topics and try and go deep. But there was a problem. There was just too much stuff in there. Like, there's so many things I've got to hear. There's all these bookmarks, all the topics I'd love to touch on. I think the first one I'd like to talk about is this concept of mazal, right? Being in the right place, right time. It's something that I've tried to articulate over years, but you just nailed it. Do you want to run us through this? Because I think it's central to your whole success.
I don't know if we nailed it, but that's the best explanation of luck that I've ever heard. Luck in Hebrew is called mazal, and I found it from a nice Israeli guy that I met and told me what the acronym of mazal is. And if I translate it to English, the first letter is location. What's location? It's me going to the Global Retail Conference in Queensland in a couple of weeks. It's you and me sitting down for a podcast. Unless you get off your ass, things don't happen. You have to go out there, you have to shake hands, and that can happen at a suppliers meeting, or it could be while watching the grand final of the football or the final of the tennis. But you got to get out there and shake hands, meet people, build relationships. The second letter stands for time and timing. And we all know that timing is everything. I have to admit and get the elephant out of the room and say that we sold our business Catch of the Day at the worst time possible. Today, that business is worth about 10 times more. We got the timing completely wrong for one reason only. No one knew that COVID is going to hit this world.
Although jumping in there, you did still sell it for a couple of $100 million. It wasn't the worst timing.
On the flip side, we sold our Menulog business at the best timing ever for the crazy price of $855. Probably a multiple of what it was worth at the time. So we got the timing completely right there. You get it right sometimes, you get it wrong sometimes. And the third part is really learning. What's learning? It's reading the newspapers every single day, going to events, listening to podcasts, reading TechCrunch and seeing what's happening around you in various verticals. And when those 3 elements get combined, I think you'll have all the knowledge to have that, what I like to call gut feeling, to jump at the opportunity and know the difference between right and wrong.
Yeah. Well, and that's how so many entrepreneurs make decisions, is that gut feeling, but it comes from a place of like just deep understanding, knowledge of the customer, and so then you can rely on your gut then. If you jump into a whole new industry and you've got no background, then your gut might send you in all sorts of directions. But the key thing I took away is particularly this timing, right place, right time, is you've got to be in it to benefit from that kind of luck, right? And you guys have definitely been in it. You've been in a range of different businesses over different time frames. Some were the right time, some were not the right time. Where did this kind of passion for playing the game come from for you?
Look, I mean, I think we're suffering from FOMO, fear of missing out. And a lot of interestingly enough, our first business, Catch of the Day, was really based on the FOMO element. Customers logged onto the site every single day in order to make sure that they don't miss on today's deal, not even knowing what today's deal is. What you are referring to is a crazy period in our life based around 2011, 2012, where we launched about 5 different businesses. It started with Scoopon in 2010, moved on to grocery run, selling groceries way before Woolworths and Coles. Then we launched a business like Mamgo, similar to, call it a baby bunting. We acquired a company from Adelaide called Vina Mofo in a space of wine. And we also launched a food delivery competitor to Menulog called EatNow. And all of that happened over a roughly 12-month period.
Well, that's crazy.
Very lucky at the time to have what we like to call the toolbox. The toolbox was everything that we needed to build new vertical businesses. And they included a great database of people that love us and trust us, a great team in the office, from customer service to design to marketing, etc., and a reputation that we've built over a 4-year period.
Yeah.
We talk in the book about the loss of focus, and some of those businesses did not succeed because we were trying to do so much. But we also mention in the book that you got to kiss a few frogs in order to find your princess. And unless you try different things, you just don't know which one of them will work. And our biggest success, excluding Catch, was the launch of EatNow, that later ended up merging with Menulog and selling for a large sum of money.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the path that we chose. Is it the right path? I'm not really sure, but it was a very interesting decade, that's for sure.
And it is the path, right? There's no other. That's the path you took. So it is how it is. I love that idea of how you had the toolbox to be able to launch all these businesses. It was, I took that away very much. The loyal consumer base that you had was the thing that let you catapult into these new verticals. In fact, actually drilling onto that a little bit more detail, in the book you've got lots of examples of like the blog that you sent out to your customers, and then when you sent out communications around the investment from Tiger Global. I love the tone that you take with your customers. It's like, it's real. Is that something you cultivated and you learned, or it's just how you've always spoken to them?
Look, honestly, I mean, that kind of humor and arrogance, we call it chutzpah, and mix it all. It's me. It really is me. And when you say that, I was really happy to say that you mentioned that blog, and especially the Target Global one. It made me smile. I've done a lot of conversation and podcast, and no one mentioned that. And yes, I do miss that. And you know what? We used to send those blogs and send emails to all of our suppliers, which were hundreds of suppliers. And it's just amazing because we used to bombard them with so much information. My brother used to call it trumpeteering. I was a big trumpeter using a megaphone, telling everyone how good you are. But in the book, again, we mentioned that if you don't tell everyone how good you are, and then who's going to say it? And if you got a great business with great numbers and great stories to tell, you might as well scream it to the world, because PR builds reputation, and PR builds trust. And I'm a firm believer in using as much PR as you can. And by the way, I'm doing it right now with you. I'm screaming about my book. Even though 100% of the profits go to charity, I still want this book to be a success. And it's going to be the same with my next business.
Well, and also I can tell this is right at the essence of your DNA, right? But you're right. Businesses that are doing well have so many achievements that probably no one else knows but them. Right? And so if you're not out there talking about it loudly, you cannot expect other people to pick up on it. And then PR is such a great testament. If other people are saying you're fantastic, well, that's a great big tick for you. If you're saying you're fantastic, well, that's still pretty good, but it's better for other people to say it.
But it's great if it's true. And if it's true, that information gets into your head. For example, I've been claiming forever, back in 2010, that Catch of the Day is Australia's #1 customer. The truth of the matter, I wasn't sure if we are or not. I knew that we are in the top 3. But just claiming that amazing statement, Catch of the Day is Australia Post #1 customer. And when you say that to all your new suppliers and your old suppliers, it creates a lot of credibility, and it makes those that don't deal with you yet want to deal with you, because everyone wants to deal with a successful business. Every supplier wants to know that they will get paid, and at the end of the day, we actually enjoyed building friendships and relationships with our suppliers. because people like to do business with people that they like, and it just leads to a lot of great places.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the areas actually that I found really interesting in the book is the concept of, relationship with your suppliers, wanting to have long-term relationships. So it's not the first deal, the second deal, but the 100th deal. Also a big focus on doing good deals, like product hunters. And you talk a lot about how, you make your profit when you buy the goods, not when you sell the goods. And the reason it's interesting for me is I'm a negotiator. I like chasing deals in a business sense, in a personal sense. But one thing I think a sophistication that you guys demonstrate was that, yes, you push hard for the deal, but you also make sure it's a good relationship that will go for a long time. Whereas I maybe go a little bit hard sometimes, which is a flaw.
We talk about the win-win-win concept because everyone needs to win. We need to find that price that both parties are sort of unhappy with, but you can't screw your supplier all the way because then they go home with an uncomfortable feeling about the business and will probably not want to do business with you again. And this is a long-term relationship. You want them to call you every time they've got end of lines and clearance, in our case, and leave the table saying, I may not have done as much money as I wanted to, but those guys from Catch, they're a really nice bunch, and I want to work with them again. And I think that we managed to establish that relationship, and Catch does have a great relationship, a great brand out there, both with suppliers and consumers.
Yeah, 100%. Well, the other thing is it's not just price, right? It's the price that you're paying for the goods, but also when you're paying or when you're making the decision and then when they're getting the cash. And those variables, you've got a lot of room to move there.
Yeah, so in the early days where we didn't have a strong brand or a great relationship or a great reputation, what won that equation is our ability to walk into a warehouse and say, what do you have in here that you need to clear? We are able to move large volumes and I will pay you today. And that's the kind of sentence that they don't hear very often. Most purchasers will want to pay in 120 days, 90, 60, and so on. Some never want to pay. But I think that won the game in many cases. So they knew that whenever they're stuck with stock, they'll call Catch because Catch will pay them straight away. And all suppliers make mistakes. They need to convert their mistakes to cash in order to keep the cash flow going so they can pay for their next container that's arriving next week.
Yeah. So, and I think one of the lessons I'd take away, or the listeners can take away, is even if you're not buying end of run stock or a mistake, it's if you're I'll pay you now, or you solve a cash flow problem for now, that could be one lever that you could use, not just price.
Especially in times like that post-COVID when there's a lot of uncertainty around and not as much cash as there used to be.
Now, I think one of the other great tools that you had in your toolbox was actually your and your brother's relationship, right? You had Hezi there all the way along pretty much, except for in the early days when you guys started parallel eBay stores. But then when you went into business together all the way through, you're there together. And that was I think it was one of the tools that you managed to deploy. It's when you saw a new opportunity, you could divide and conquer. One could go off and get it going. That's just an amazing relationship. Have you seen many others like that?
And nothing that comes to mind, because I like the way you described it, the divide and conquer, and that was exactly it. So, the start of chapter 2 start with us spotting the opportunity of Groupon in the USA. And, the title of the chapter was Great Idea by Midnight, Execute by Midday. And we really loved it and said that we could, launch it because of our toolbox. But I had to continue, what I love the most, which is buying, selling, and continue building Catch. And my brother literally left the building, moved into a different building, and started building Scoopon from scratch with a whole new team and a whole new program. And there was full trust between us. Gabby will continue doing what he does best, and Hezi will run the new program. We did the same thing, by the way, after Scoopon was already a 2-year-old business and had its own intrapreneurs that would run it. We talk about John Barros in the book. Mm-hmm. My brother moved on and did exactly the same thing with EatNow. So the truth is, I can't take any credit for the whole EatNow Menulog transaction. It was all my brother. But because of the toolbox, because of the database, because of the money that Catch could provide, being the cash cow to run businesses in their early days, again, we managed to find those princesses. So, we talk in the book that, yes, you can run a business on your own. You can do it as a single founder, but it's a lot easier and it's certainly a lot more fun having someone that you fully trust by your side.
It is a relationship we see a lot in successful businesses, is not necessarily siblings. I think that's actually reasonably rare. And I think maybe your guys' upbringing and your closeness really helped with that relationship. It's like, I think about my brother and I'm not quite sure we'd go the distance that you guys have. But we certainly see, not necessarily siblings, but two people at the head of companies that, one's got the outside, one's got the inside, one's got the what we call dynamics, the other one's got the mechanics. And it is important because it's very rare that you have those two things, dynamics, mechanics, existing in one person, or at least balanced in one person.
And you know what? When both of us, we claim in the book that both of us are not technical, both are not financial, both of us don't get the legal side of the business. But we also say that we always surround ourselves with smart people. So if we had an area that none of us were actually strong at, we made sure that we hire someone that's smarter than us. What we dealt with throughout the whole period was the strategy. The strategy always came from us. And the drive and the risk taking as well, which is something that is required. And I'm happy to say that both of us have it in abundance. We're not afraid to take risks.
Clearly.
It's great to have different opinions in the room, and sometimes, and both of us realized back in 2011 that we are not qualified to be the CEO of such a large company. And we kept hiring professional CEOs, and we had about 3 of them at different stages of the company. Because even with CEOs, you need different people for at different stages.
So I'm interested in when you were able to identify that you needed a certain type of advisor or assistance. Did you have, let's talk about finances. You talk about the financial management quite a bit throughout the book. It's like, did you need to make a mistake or have someone asking for a set of finances that you didn't have for you to realize you needed that kind of person, or how did you identify, right, we've got a skill gap, let's bring someone on?
Look, it was slowly but surely. I'll tell you a funny story. So roughly around 2010, we started being approached by lots of VCs from around the world that spotted the opportunity. We made all the BRW list, fastest growing company, etc., etc. And funnily enough, around 2010, we had one part-time accountant taking care of all the finances in the business. We had probably 30 or 40 employees. And a lot of those VCs from New York and London wanted us to provide us with all these crazy numbers. But unfortunately, we had nothing available because we never measured any of these numbers. We were just busy running a small business that turned into a big business, and some may have called it a large business. The line that I like to use to describe that is, you don't know what you don't know. So that accountant was great at doing the basic accounting, but he certainly wasn't ready to be able to speak to a New York-based VC. And anyway, long story short, we ended up finding bigger and better people. As the business grew, we could afford better people as well.
I think that you don't know what you don't know is actually an essential ingredient to entrepreneurial businesses. Like if you knew everything that you needed to put in place and all the people that you needed and everything that you would need further down the track, you'd probably it'd be paralysis. You're like, that's just too much. It's like, no, let's start small. Let's get this figured out, and then we'll learn as we go. Which you guys certainly did a great job of. So you've obviously have assembled a pretty significant team throughout that period. You had periods of like massive headcount growth. But one of the other areas that I really took away from the story was your focus on culture. And so I'd love to talk about that a little bit. How is the culture that you put in place in the early days what has survived through to today, or your time leaving each of the businesses, and how did you maintain that?
Look, I would think so. So we discuss in the book culture in the business, and I'm very, very, very proud to say that we've built a really happy workplace. But talking about culture, I find actually one of the hardest topics because it's so hard to put into words. What a happy place is meant, and how do you actually create a happy place, But again, very happy to say that we managed to do that. How do we do that? I don't know. We discuss in the book the concept of intrapreneurs, building amazing people that are in charge of divisions, giving them the freedom to grow, giving them the freedom to express their opinions. We never ran it in a form of an authoritarian business, Everyone could talk to anyone. Everyone felt comfortable raising ideas. And it would make me extremely happy if the head of design will tell me, hey, Gabby, you're an idiot. That's not the way that we should do it. We should be doing it the other way.
I think with some of the examples of your very, very, very early websites, if you had a head of design back then, they definitely would have been saying that.
You don't know what you don't know, and
Just circling back to that, I mean, I love that you talk about how, something around you should be embarrassed by the first version of your website or anything you put up, because that's how you get speed, and that's how you guys had an idea by midnight and launched by midday. It's just like, let's just make it happen.
I think smarter people than me have mentioned it, have said it in various ways, but your launch product is never your best product. You got to get it to some sort of an MVP, something that you are proud of, that has the basic features that you wanted to provide your consumer. But we all know that a month later, 2 months later, and 6 months later, it will be a completely different product. Sometimes it pivots 180 degrees or 90 degrees, and that's fine, and that's how we create things. That's what entrepreneurship is all about. Not accepting the status quo and trying to improve it all the time.
You definitely had a lot of past employees, heads of divisions, saying in the book, telling their story about how they had an idea and they brought it to you, and you guys were like, give it a shot. And that's how I think a number of the businesses started. Is that correct?
Yeah, and we also mentioned around 2012, when we launched about 5 different businesses, we were working on about 4 other ones. Some of them we may have spent millions of dollars trying to get it to life, but for one reason or another, whether it's lack of focus, wrong timing, people, etc., those never saw the light of day. And these are brands that none of us know because, again, they've never been launched. Again, one thing that we are very proud of in the book, and we say, hey, you may know us for some of our successes, but along the lines, there were a lot of failures. We have failed many times, and I think that's the reason that we succeeded.
There's an interesting paradox in here. So, one of the quotes in the book is that as an entrepreneur, something like out of your 10 best ideas, 9 are going to be the enemy, or 9 ideas will be the enemy of the best. And so it's easy on one hand to be like, okay, try and focus on the best ideas. However, you guys are also living proof that a lot of ideas help you get to the best ideas. So how do you balance those out?
I don't know. I mean, again, we chose the let's try and do everything model. Our frenemy, Mr. Ruslan Kogan, chose the other model. Let's focus on one brand and do everything in one direction. Again, we chose different paths and been successful in various degrees. I don't know. Again, the truth is, I think that we are suffering from FOMO, and if we saw an opportunity, we wanted to have a part in it, and that's just who we are. But it's interesting that we mentioned in the book both sides. So focus on the one side, and on the other side, 9 ideas are the enemy of the one idea. Please take from it whatever you like and apply it to your life and business circle. And I'm happy that this book is really influencing lots and lots of small and large business owners in whatever way. We have 200 lessons. Take whatever you want.
Hey team, Jack again. Just another invitation to make sure you're jumping into our resource center to be guided by the world's best entrepreneurs for how you can grow and scale great companies. Head to www.the-entourage.com/resources to make it happen. Now, let's get back into the show.
Well, I think what I'd take from that, or the advice that I'd have for anyone listening is, pay attention to what works for you, right? So if you are an entrepreneur that really loves pursuing every idea, but you can never quite make it work, then maybe you do need a little bit of focus. Or if you're on the other end of the spectrum and you've only been focusing on one thing and you've got super itchy feet, you really want to go out and try, then maybe you need to broaden your horizon a little bit. But just pay attention to what's working for you. You mentioned frenemy. Right now, this is actually a concept that came through really strongly. A lot of your success has come from identifying who are your enemies that you want to become friends with. How do you partner up with them? Can you talk us through some of that experience?
So frenemy is a term that was introduced to me by a frenemy, Mr. Paul Greenberg, the founder of Deals Direct. He's known as the grandfather of Australian retail. And he's a great friend, and I was in Sydney last week and we went for dinner together. The concept of frenemy, we talk in the book about the concept of 1 + 1 = 3. We always believe that when you combine or merge 2 competing entities into a friendly entity, you will be able to grow that business a lot easier, a lot faster, less competition, and it's much better to always have a smaller piece of a larger pie. We've proven it, and these are not just words, we've proven it on a number of occasions. Of course, when we merged EatNow with Menulog, at the time we owned about 95% of the food delivery in Australia. Can you believe that? By early 2015, EatNow and Menulog owned 95% of the food delivery. That was before Uber Eats and Deliveroo have joined the market. And that turned out to be a huge success. We've done it again in mid-2017 when we merged our successful Scoopon business with its competitor that was owned by Luxury Escape called Kudo. So Scoopon and Kudo right now are frenemies, and Gabby and Hezi, as part of that transaction, got a slice of Luxury Escapes, the very successful, travel deal business.
Yeah.
So please keep your open eye. Make sure you know your competitors. Go to breakfast with them, like I've been breakfasting people from Maya, Davy Jones, or Kogan over the years, and good things will happen. At the end of the day, we're here on Earth for a short period, and it's better to be friends than enemies.
Yeah. So getting down like really tactically, how do you go for breakfast with one of your enemies? Do you just call them up and be like, hey, let's catch up? Or what's your strategy?
Something like that. And then you give each other a little bit. But I think everyone is thinking about that, and then you start swapping numbers, how much have you sold last month? How much have you sold last month? Is it possible for us to merge? What do you think we're worth? I'll give you 50% of the business, 60, 40. I've told you about two successful ones that made the light of day. Others did not. And some I wish they did. For example, Airtasker, or for example, My Deal. That never happened.
Yeah, great. Yep. So, okay, maybe that's a bit of a challenge for anyone listening.
Now that I've been unemployed for a year and a half, I wish we made more of them and earlier during our journey. But, what's done is done.
So maybe just circling back to culture, because we moved off from that. It's like culture, when you're a business of 20 or 30, you can kind of get your arms around that, right? And the founder's going to have a lot of influence. But when you get to 300 or more, what are some of the kind of principles or things that you tried to keep a hold of as you got bigger?
First thing that comes to mind is be nice to people. Just be nice, be a nice person, which is not something that comes easily for everyone, because some people by core are pricks. We talk about assholes in the book as well. I think that we are just nice guys, and we can't be pricks because it's not part of our DNA. And when you're nice, you generally like to surround yourself with people that are similar to yourself. And I think that we did surround ourselves with 20 or so intrapreneurs that had the same mentality as us. Be nice, be hardworking, be challenging, and so on. And that kind of attitude filters down, not from myself down to the team, but from those 20 entrepreneurs. And you mentioned, yes, it is hard, because when you have a team of 40 or 50, you know everyone by name and you sit together for lunches, etc. But when we got to a team of 300, I still probably only know 40 of them by name. But I made sure that we know the heads of department. But you could see that the departments were very happy. It makes me so happy seeing the whole IT department going for a walk around the neighborhood together, or the whole design department playing basketball every lunchtime. And that's where relationships are being built, because people like to work in a happy place, and people will give you more when they are happy in the workplace. I can tell you that during our time, you could never get anyone to leave Catch. And trust me, a lot of our competitors have approached a lot of our employees, because we are known to have the best employees in the market. And during our time, no one ever left Catch. It gets to a point where it's not about your salary anymore. It's about the family that you created. And we did create a real family atmosphere.
Yeah. Oh, and you had people there for decades. Like some of your earliest employees are still there today. It's amazing.
The first employee, Mr. Ferry Sato, one of our tech guys, he is still there in the business today after 14 and a half years. He outlasted the brothers,
Well, there you go. Although if anyone's complaining about some old tech debt, it's like, this thing doesn't work. He's like, I probably had something to do with that. Intrapreneurs, this concept of intrapreneurs, bringing people in to run departments. I think it's something that a lot of entrepreneurs, their business grow, should really focus on. Like, how do you bring these people that are, they want to work within an organization. They want to work for someone else's dream, but more about they want to latch onto that, but they have the entrepreneurial or dynamic drive to keep it moving. How did you find good intrapreneurs? What did you look for? How did you convince them to come on board?
You know what? I think the leaders of department in many cases came from within the department. And you could easily see when you are surrounded by a team of, call it 15 designers, who is the leader of that group, who actually wants to work harder, who understands the DNA of Catch, and so on. You put me in a team in a warehouse with 20 employees, and we're all going to do a certain task. Within about 10 minutes, I could tell you who is the best person within that group. It's quite easy to find them. And what happens? Those intrapreneurs, want to get elevated. They want to lead. They step up. They speak more. They surround themselves with similar people. In the early days, and we mentioned that in the book, we hired the best people that we could afford. And back in 2006, an average salary in our business was $50,000. And most of them were university dropouts, probably around the age of 20, 21. And I just have to say that I think that we were lucky to either find the right people or maybe build them into the right people. Later on in 2016, we mentioned how there was some sort of quite a big change where a lot of those 21-year-olds that reached the age of 30 did not know what they did not know. And they were ready to move on to the next stage or the next part in their life. But by 2016, the business was already very successful, and suddenly we could really afford to get the best people within the industry. And I'm talking about salaries of $250,000 or $300,000. And then you suddenly get a 40-year-old, someone that has worked for JB Hi-Fi or Telstra or one of the market leaders for a period of 20 years. And there's nothing you can do. Nothing beats experience. A 40-year-old knows more than a 20-year-old, especially if you worked for one of the market leaders. And look, that's the strength that you get with being, financially stable and a strong brand, which some startup companies obviously cannot do.
Yeah. Well, you got to work up to that. I'd love to touch on your experience and how you felt the experience played out when you started talking to like big VCs, investment firms. Here you are, you've hustled with your brother and you've built this amazing business, and now you're starting to talk like big dollars, serious people. How did that process go for you?
So you're talking about taking you back in time to about the end of 2010. As I mentioned, we started making all the lists, and lots of VCs started calling us. And we had no one in the business. So the calls were taken by myself and my brother. We were the first to admit that in 2011, we did not know what CFO actually stood for. So that's where we come from. Chief Financial Officer, that everyone should know by now.
Did you just on that, were they like, can I speak to your CFO? And you go, yeah, I'll just transfer you. You're like, Hezi, someone wants to speak to you.
It was a really interesting time, and people are valuing us. Suddenly, someone values us at $50 million in, October 2010. And 2 months later, someone else is valuing us at $80 million. And 3 months later, it was already 120, and then it was 150. And the story concludes in the book at how we took financial investment from Tiger Global, one of the world's leading VCs. That was the first investment into an Australian company. They invested $80 million into our business at a valuation of $200 million. And that's the end of chapter 1. And if you remember, I'm saying at the end of chapter 1, and at that moment, the business was never, ever the same again. And our life was never the same again.
Mate, we've only covered chapter 1. I actually honestly lost count of the businesses and entities in there. But now you've merged most of them or exited out of most of them. What's keeping you occupied now, today?
So today, myself and my brother own 50% of Scoopon, and we also own 20% of Luxury Escapes. The truth is we don't work in any of those businesses because they're run by Adam Schwab and a great team at South Melbourne. Myself and my brother have invested in about 15 Australian startups, companies like High Pages and Tribe by Jules Lund. We are certainly taking a lot of time meeting lots of founders. I've been describing my situation of 2020 as I feel like a retired soccer player watching the best game from the sidelines. And it has been the best game from the sideline, certainly from someone that has left e-commerce. And e-commerce is just an amazing space to be right now. And of course, I still have a lot of friends and frenemies within that space. And yeah, it's something that I really miss. I miss the 500 people that worked at Catch with us. I miss that reason to wake up in the morning. But I think we certainly are. We found out throughout 2020 that we are not ready to retire, and I'm sure that you'll hear from us again doing one thing or another.
Yeah, awesome. And there must be a little bit of I don't know, it's not quite Schadenfreude, but it is a little bit of. I'd have a little bit of a gloat if I was you, seeing like the hard, like A decade ago, no one believed in e-commerce. You were like bashing on their doors, trying to get them onto it, and now the whole world is behind e-commerce, and you guys helped make it happen. So that's pretty awesome. All right, Gabby, I've got a couple more questions. We've got 5 questions here that I haven't seen, you haven't seen. We go rapid fire through these. You ready to make it happen in a minute-ish?
Okay.
Number 1, what is something you think everyone should do at least once in their life?
First thing that comes to mind, go to a World Cup competition of soccer. That's my other passion in life. So I'm giving you the first thing that comes to my mind. I did it once when I was 40, and then I did it twice more.
The look on your face when you were starting to brew that answer up, that could have gone in any direction. So I'm very happy with that answer.
It's the first thing I thought about.
All right, number 2, would you ever build a business without your brother? Why or why not?
If we're both living in Melbourne, I don't think so, because I think that we really enjoy, working together and supporting each other. But, I'm still young and he's still young, and there's a good chance that we'll be living in different parts of the world, and our paths will separate.
Yeah, okay, great. Number 3 is, what is a guilty pleasure of yours?
Ooh, I don't know. I suppose eating bread and chocolate.
Bread and chocolate, hopefully not together.
I love pastries. I love croissants and lots of stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You can have a chocolate croissant. That is bread and chocolate together. Next question is, what's the best lesson you've received from your parents?
So we actually mentioned one lesson in the book at how our parents made sure that we don't cry about spilt milk, and we always look at opportunities on how to make money rather than how to save money. I meet a lot of people on a daily basis, and they spend their life saving. And I can tell you that this is a great part of the characteristics that both me and my brother are quite similar at. We don't like saving. We are very generous, but at the same time, we always think big at how to make and create.
Yeah. Well, I think that's important for entrepreneurs with a growth business, right? You can't save your way to growth.
I met an entrepreneur this week that was born to a family that arrived by a boat from one of the Asian countries. And he said, I grew up in a family with absolutely nothing. And all I learned from my parents in how to save. And I find it quite hard right now, as he is in his 20s, to try and have the other side of what I've just told. Yeah, I've been fortunate to get that from my parents.
Okay, excellent. Final question. If someone wanted to build a successful business to exit out of one day, what's the one key thing for them to make that happen?
As we say in the book is full of 200 lessons, but we mentioned that we saved the last lessons for last, the best lesson for last. And the best lesson that we think is it's all about the people. Of course, the idea is important, and of course, execution is important, but all of these, it all centers down to the team that you surround yourself with, because that team will be there to make the 1,000 decisions that are required to make every single day when you run your startup, small business, or a business that requires scaling. Nothing beats having the right people around you.
And it will let you, as the founder, be able to exit out of the business, like yourself and your brother have. You can only do that if you've got a fantastic team that will keep it running after you.
Absolutely. They say that you know that you've built a great business is when it runs just as well or better when you are not there.
Gabby Leibovich, I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for jumping on. Thanks for sharing so much, not just in the book. I absolutely loved it, but today, lots of great lessons there. Also, thanks for being a champion of e-commerce here in Australia.
Thank you very much. It was great being here. I enjoyed it.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Make It Happen show. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And it doesn't need to end there. We've actually gone and grabbed a whole bunch of extra resources for you. Behind the scenes footage, videos from this and all the other episodes, as well as show notes that you can grab for free. Just head along to www.the-entourage.com/podcast and you can grab all those extra resources. Thanks for tuning in, and I cannot wait to introduce you to our next guest on the next episode.